All right, we're back. Let's go ahead and continue on with the next step. We've added our markers to the video along with notes. And so we've got those markers and notes in. So now it says we need to add and edit a music track that will appeal to the target audience. So let's go ahead and use our window menu. And I'm going to go to the Essential Sound panel. So in this one, you can come through and you can do a search for all kinds of different things. So for example, if I was to play that's pretty loud. I'm going to bring that snippet down just a little bit. So I've got the volume control right here to control how much is coming out. Okay, so there's all kinds of options where you could really just quickly see how it sounds in the context. Not particularly loving any of these. We could go into moods and I could say, oh, let me find something just a little more epic or maybe dreamy, maybe something inspiring. Let's see what we got there. Maybe. It's kind of interesting. So in my case, I've actually gone ahead, and I'm going to jump back over here to the main window. I've gone ahead and found some audio, and if we toggle that down, you can see I can load up this particular soundtrack. Pretty loud. So what I want to do is super loud. My goodness. Let's turn this thing down just a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and pop that into the audio track 2. I've got my target or my source patch right here. I've loaded this up. And let's go ahead and jump over to this, go to the home, and then I hit the period key, which will overwrite this file directly down into the track. So boom. Let's zoom out just a little ways. Now this is not look like maybe it's the whole track. Let's see. Is that the whole thing? Nope, that's the very beginning. And then we're pretty close to being done with it over here. Just still have to finish getting that all the way down to 1 minute. Cool. So we've got our music in, but now we need to start doing just a little bit of mixing. So we've added a piece of music. It says use the audio track mixer to adjust the dialogue track to peak around -12. Mix the music volume levels to support the vocal without drowning it out. So initially we're just going to open up our audio track mixer. So if we come in here, Shift 6, we'll bring up the audio track mixer. And if we play both of these back, we can at least try to get an initial level of volume for the track. So I'm going to bring this in, hit play, and let's find something with her vocal. I'm going to mute this just for a second. Actually, let's not mute it. I'm going to pull the volume way down. And I notice what has happened here. Oh, somehow I've turned all of the dialogue tracks all the way down. That's strange. So this is a great example, though, of when to show. You can see I thought it looked strange. I'm really not sure how or when I did this, but I've pulled all of the dialogue waveforms way down. When you hover over them, you can see they're hovering really low. If you're not seeing these, you got to go to this little wrench, and you can choose to show the video keyframes. So this is going to be the video keyframes or show the audio keyframes. So video keyframes is going to be this line, which controls transparency, and the audio keyframes are this one. So I'm actually going to just take this clip. I'm going to bring this all the way back up to 0 dB. And if I hold the command key down, you'll see it move slower. So you can move it in 1/10 of a dB increments. And then I'm going to actually copy that, Command C. I'm going to select all of these, and we're going to use the paste attributes. So Option Command V. So Option Command V will paste attributes, and I don't want to paste any of the video attributes. I just want the volume that I copied from this one to paste that audio attribute or the volume to all these other clips. So watch. As soon as I paste it, you can see all of a sudden the dialogue is back. So now in the instructions, it says use the audio track mixer to adjust the dialogue track to peak around -12. So when I hit play here, I can look at my audio track mixer. I see audio track 1. Let's go ahead and rename that. I'm going to rename this dialogue. And audio track 2, I'm going to right click and choose rename. I'm going to rename this music. And of course, at any time, feel free to pause the video and make sure that you've got all these pieces in place too. But now I'm just going to pull this music way down, hit play, and I'm going to watch these levels right here. So here you can see it's at 0 dB or -6 or -12. And this is decibels full scale, or a digital decibel, in which case in digital land, 0 is the loudest thing you can get before it clips. So the numbers you see on the left side of this fader are the volume levels of the fader. I know that can be a little confusing, but essentially you can think of this 0 as what we call unity gain. In other words, if you push above that 0, you're boosting the track. You're boosting the volume and adding a little bit of noise too. If it's below this 0 on the left-hand side, it's actually reducing the volume of the track. If you double click on these, it will reset it to 0 where it's not boosting or cutting. But then the numbers on this side of the meter, you're seeing how loud is that signal. So for example, if I mute this music track and I hit play,
I know
I can
how
see
you feel
that the
because
vocal
that's
right
exactly
now
where I was not long ago.
is averaging a little over -24. So,
And today, I'm a nursing professor who's
and
helped
in
over
fact, some of them are getting
5,000
up here
students
around
become nurses
-18. So
by
that's
studying
looking to be
less
pretty
and
good.
living more. As a
So I'm
nurse,
going to maybe
I get
bump this
asked
up
all
just
the
a little
time
bit
how I made it through without drowning. So I built the
until those
nursing school
peaks are right there
masterclass to
about
teach
-12.
anyone how
Pretty
to
good.
ace nursing school.
Then we're going to mix the music until it supports it. So I'm going to hit play, unmute,
By walking you step by step through my 4 strategies for success, helping
just
you
mix it up.
read, take notes, and study the right way.
Now, make sure you're using a good set of headphones, but we're pushing that up just until we can barely hear this. Now, until it's supporting the music. But you can tell if we started with it all the way up,
Gets A's. So sign up today for my free half-hour training.
it's just going to overwhelm everything. So I can actually bring it way down.
To reading, note-taking, and exams in nursing school, showing you.
And that's a decent start. So that's actually going to give us a pretty decent start here for our track. We've adjusted the dialogue track to peak around -12, mix the music to support it. Now we're going to go in and actually clean these up. Now, of course, we could use under the Essential Sound panel, we could come in and choose Edit, and we could actually just label all these tracks and use those tools as well. But I want you to see how we use some of these tools and what essentially they're doing. So we've got that in. It says add a parametric equalizer to both the dialogue and the music track. So I'm going to come up here and in the music, the audio track mixer, I'm going to toggle down the effects plugins. You can see this little arrow here at the top where you can put in plugins. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to go to this first one, and I'm going to go to the EQ, and I'm going to add what we call a parametric equalizer. When I bring that up, you can see it's in here now, and if I double click it, we're going to actually see this parametric equalizer
in real time,
which shows us the energy of whatever is on that track. So in this case, this is our dialogue track, and we can solo it with this solo button.
How to become a nurse while studying less and living more.
And so I can see the energy. When she talks, watch what we see right here.
Less and living more.
So what you're seeing here is the lowest pitch or lowest frequency a human can hear and the highest pitch or highest frequency a human can hear. So if I were to go through and just boost this, so anything here at this 0 line is not boosting or cutting, but if I boost this, you're going to see it actually is just like turning up that low frequency boost in your car, or turning up or down the mid frequency boost, or turning up or down the treble or the high frequency boost. Listen to what happens with this.
The problem is you don't understand nurse.
Probably don't hear a whole lot of difference here in the lows because you can tell her voice, which is most of what we're listening to, is actually all the way up here around 150 hertz or 150 cycles per second. You can see this 100 to 200. But as soon as I get it up where her voice actually is.
School. Or you don't know how to read hundreds of pages, take the right notes, or how to.
You can hear that we're boosting those frequencies and it's going. So if I were to boost the really high frequencies,
study for exams so you get confident.
You hear that really becoming very loud and prominent.
A's every time.
So it's because we're adding the high frequencies. So that's what a parametric EQ does. It lets you boost a range of frequencies or pitches.
I know how you feel because that's exactly where I was not long ago.
Or you can cut them. If you pull it below the mid, then it's actually going to cut them. Listen to how dark this gets now.
And today, I'm a nursing professor who's helped over 5,000 students become nurses by studying less and.
Nice. So that essentially is what we can use to eliminate excess junk in the tracks. So in this case, the parametric equalizer gives us a couple options. One is this frequency boost.
Living more. As a nurse, I get asked
This bell-shaped EQ lets you boost a specific frequency and the frequencies around it.
all the time how I made it through
So a lot of times when there's something, if it doesn't sound particularly good, we might boost this
without drowning.
and see
So
if we can
I
find a
built
frequency or a spot where makes it sound even worse. Maybe turn that boost into a cut.
the nursing school masterclass to teach anyone
So in this case, the instructions ask us to do something specific though. It says to use a high-pass filter to cut out excess lows in the dialogue track.
how to ace nursing
So when I hit play here, you see
school by walking you
every time she talks, you can see these spikes. Those are the actual pitches of her voice, the frequencies of her voice. But you'll notice there's a bunch of excess junk right here that's bouncing around. It might be the air conditioning,
step by step through my 4
other
strategies.
noise, something from the microphone, but you can tell it's not her voice. So we're going to use this one that's labeled L. And this is a low, in this case, shelving EQ. See L right here? And this says use a high pass filter to cut out excess lows. So right now this is set to what we call a shelving EQ. But if we click it, it actually becomes what we call a filter. So if I click on this until it looks like a steep drop off, then that becomes what we call a filter or a high pass filter. And so you can tell that it's going to reduce all the low frequencies.
For success. Help
So another thing we can do is actually right here, you actually just get a separate high pass filter. So this one is kind of acting as both a filter, or you can tell it's slightly different than a filter in that we might call it a shelving EQ because it's boosting everything or cutting everything below a certain pitch.
helping you read
But if I turn on this high pass filter, you can tell it's very similar, except it's not just turning it down a little bit, turning it down, but then still gently rolling it off. You can tell when I turn that one off, if I turn on this filter, you can tell it's just chopping off all these low frequencies. So watch what happens.
take notes, and study the right way that gets A's. So sign up today for my free
So if I use this high pass filter and I pull it way up here, you can tell it's cutting off all the lowest pitches of her voice,
half-hour training to
which is not what we want. What I do want to do
reading
is cut off any junk, any of this low frequency woofiness that's down here below where her voice is.
note-taking, and exams in nursing school, showing you in real time how to become a nurse while studying.
And then we can turn this off and on with this bypass and see if we hear a difference. I'm going to turn it off. Let's jump back to the beginning.
Look, if you're a struggling nursing student, you should be studying less and living more.
So in this case, you can tell we cut off all that low frequency energy that would actually be audible if we were listening to this over speakers or sound system, and even over phones. It can make it really dark and kind of hard to hear. So we've turned on this high pass filter and we've cut off the junk. And it says use a low pass filter and bell-shaped EQs on the music track to cut any frequencies conflicting with the dialogue. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to hit play here.
The problem is
And I want to take note of what frequencies, look at these numbers, where this dialogue is. So I see a lot of her voice spikes happening here between 2 and 300.
you don't understand nursing school.
Around
Or
500.
you don't know how to read hundreds
Pretty much all through here, we can see these spikes every time she's talking. That is the energy of her voice.
of pages.
So we're going to copy a parametric EQ over the music track. You can actually just hold down the Option key and drag, and that will put over the exact same thing. But I don't want the exact same thing. Instead, I'm going to use either a low pass filter or some bell-shaped EQs to roll off some of the low frequency or the high frequencies. So I turn on this low pass filter, and this is on the music track. So I'm going to unsolo this and hit play.
Take the right notes or how to study for exams so you get confident A's every time. I know how you feel because that's exactly where
So you can tell by using this low pass filter, it lets the lows pass, but it cuts the highs. So the low pass filter
I was.
is right now really just lopping off those high frequencies. So you can actually adjust this roll-off filter. And notice if you go with 6 decibels per octave, it's a much more gentle roll-off.
Not long ago. And today,
So you hear more of those high frequencies. If you did a very steep filter, it literally just chops off everything.
I'm a nursing
So you can hear, if I pull it down here,
professor who's helped over 5
it cuts off all the high frequencies. Let's make it a little bit more gentle. Let's try like 6 or 12 dB. So it's a very gentle slope. And let's pull this down until the vocals really start to become more present.
1,000 students become nurses by studying less and living more. As a nurse, I get asked all the time how I made it through without drowning. So I built the nursing school masterclass
So by pulling it back to around here, it cuts off a lot of those high frequencies that were
to teach
competing. But we also can take these bell-shaped EQs, and I'm going to sweep this around and push it up. So right now I'm boosting these frequencies. But remember, between around 250 and 1K is where we saw a lot of her voice frequencies. So what I'm going to do is boost this and sweep it around here until it actually makes her voice harder to hear. And that's going to let me know I've got too much energy in that frequency. So I'll go and I'll turn that boost into a cut. Let's try it.
anyone how to ace nursing school by walking you step by step through my 4 strategies for success, helping you read.
All of those actually make it pretty hard to understand her. So I'm going to pull this down, and let's just pull it down maybe -5 dB. There's 0, so pulling it down to this line would be -5.
Take notes and study the right way that gets A's. So sign up today for my free half-hour.
And sure enough, that seemed to work pretty well. That was cutting out some excess. So we've added the high pass, the low pass. Now it says to add a dynamics processor. And so we're going to go over to our track. I'm going to click on this and choose amplitude and compression and add a dynamics processor. I'll close this window out and open the dynamics processor. A dynamics processor, what this does is it actually reduces the dynamic range of the voice. So if we hit play,
training. Look, if you're
you can
a
see
struggling nursing student,
how loud her voice is, going from -90 decibels up the way almost to 0.
you should be studying less and living more.
Looks like
The
it's
problem
averaging
is
around
you don't understand nursing school,
-20.
or you don't know how to.
And so what this says is to add a dynamics processor, set it to a medium compressor preset. So let's go find something like a medium compressor. I almost wonder, preset. Let's go with, how about a smooth vocal? Just change that. In this case, a smooth vocal.
Read hundreds of.
What this is showing you is as she gets louder here, when she gets louder than this line, this is called the threshold, above 20 dB, it's actually going to turn down any words that are louder than that. You can see instead of letting them go out at full volume, it's turning them down.
Pages. Take the right note.
The problem is she doesn't have too many words that are actually louder than that. So let's pull that threshold down a little bit. So it starts turning her loudest words down just a hair.
Or how to study for exams so you get confident A's every time. I know how you feel.
Now, what that is doing is all those words that are louder than this threshold, which is -31 decibels, you can tell it's turning those words down. That's what this meter is showing you, is how much it's turning down the loud words, the words louder than threshold. So when I hit play, we can see it's turning down the loudest words.
Because that's exactly where I was
About
not
3
long
or 4
ago.
dB.
And today, I'm a nursing professor who's helped over 5,000 students become nurses by studying.
There it looks
less
like we're getting
and living
almost
more.
6 dB of
As a
gain
nurse,
reduction. So it's turning down the loudest words about 5 or 6 dB.
I get asked all the time.
So I'm going to go ahead and turn this makeup gain back up. So I'm going to turn that up about, let's say, since we brought it down about 4 or 5 dB, now I'm going to turn the whole track back up 5 dB.
How I made it through without drowning.
And let's hear it without.
So I built the nursing school masterclass to teach anyone how to ace
with.
nursing school by walking you step by step through my.
So by turning down the loudest words, it made them closer in volume to the quiet words. And then once they were no longer quite as different, we got them closer in dynamic range. We compressed the dynamic range, the difference between the loud and the soft. Then we turned the whole thing back up with this makeup gain. So I got a nice smooth vocal on there. I'm going to change that here in the instructions. Add a smooth vocal compressor preset, adjust your threshold until we got about 4 to 5 dB, and we added the makeup gain back until we had about that 4 or 5 dB made up. Good. The last thing, I'm noticing a little bit of S-ing with the voice. So when she's saying these different things.
Every time. I know how you feel because that's exactly.
So what I'm going to do to actually identify that is I'm going to come right here.
Because that's exactly.
So I'm going to find a little spot with a lot of S's. I'm going to set my in point and an out point. I'm going to turn on loop playback. Now, if you don't see loop playback, we can come up and look. but I'm not going to see it right here. So I'm going to go to this menu. I'm going to click on my button editor, click on that, and I'm going to look for the loop playback button. So there should be a play button that has a loop around it right here. And I can click and I can drag that down into my little play bar. And then I'm going to hit OK. And now when I turn on loop playback, if this is on, it's actually just going to sit there and play this section over and over. It'll just loop it around.
Because that's exact.
And then I'm going to add that dynamics de-esser. So back under amplitude and compression, de-esser. Double click on it to open it. And let's look for a high voice de-esser. And what we can get is this is essentially also a compressor. But what it does is it only listens for sound in this specific frequency range, and we'll move that around until we find the frequencies that her S's are. You see it's the same frequencies from 20 up to 20K. So let's hit play.
Because that's exact.
So you can actually see that the frequencies for hers, every time she says is actually over here somewhere.
Because that's exact.
See it right there?
Because that's exact.
And let's see if we can bring that. I'm going to go with this one right here. And center this around those where the S's are occurring.
That's exact.
And then
that's exact.
There we go. We can actually click this output sibilance only and listen for those S's. So we can actually sweep this around and see if we got it right. I definitely hear that.
Because that's exact.
And once we've got that, we can actually bring this threshold down so that anything louder, any S sounds louder than the threshold will get turned down. That's what the gain reduction does.
Because that's exact.
Okay, and let's turn off this loop and clear my clips, and let's just try that.
Confident A's every time. I know how you feel because that's exactly where I was
And you can
not
see
long
it starting
ago.
to turn those
and
down.
Today, I'm a nursing professor.
And so you can hear now as she's saying those S's, and you can even see it turn down every time she hits an S.
Pages. Take the right notes or how to study for exams so you get confident A's every time.
So by adjusting this, we're saying only turn things down when she says something in this frequency range.
I know how you feel because that's exactly.
So we really saw those peaks. We dragged our frequencies around that, and then we pulled the threshold down until it's turning down those S sounds about 5 or so dB.
Where I was not long ago. And today, I'm a nursing professor.
Beautiful. So that's much better. So we've added this de-esser. The final output of our mix track should peak around -12, and the audio should fade out at the end. So let's go ahead and kind of see how this is doing.
Who's helped
I'm going to blow this window up nice and big so I can see my 0 to -12. And when I hit play,
over 5,000 students become nurses
if I unmute the music track,
by studying less and living more. As a nurse, I get asked all the time how I made it through.
And I'm going to mix these two until the voice, the music, and then the overall here on the mix track actually are peaking around -12.
Without drowning. So I built the Nursing School Masterclass to teach anyone how to ace nursing school.
All right.
By walking you.
Sounds pretty good. All right, now we need to add a nice little fade, and then I need to come back in and trim this up just a little bit more. We can do a fade in a couple different ways. If we switch to our pen tool, that's the P key, and that'll switch you here to this pen tool. We can actually come in and just add a nice little fade. I'm going to come and hover over my little volume line. Again, if you don't see it, click on the wrench and choose Show Audio Keyframes. And then I'm going to come and hold my mouse and just click it right there to add a keyframe. Click to add another keyframe. And then I can pull this keyframe down so that the music fades out.
In nursing school, showing you in real time how to become.
All right. So that adds a nice little fade at the end. Maybe I don't want quite that much. Let me fade it out just a little bit better. And we're good to go. All right, so tiny little fade, backslash, and that has given us a nice little introduction to adding a music track, mixing using a couple of different processors, and just an overall exposure to the process of balancing our vocal track with our music using tools like a parametric EQ, a dynamics processor, and a de-esser, and then adjusting the overall mix balance until it hits a given level. In this case, we shot for around -12. All right, so feeling pretty good. Going to export this, and then we'll jump on here in the next video. We're going to jump over to adding B-roll and images and transitions.